I want you to think about the moment you walk through your front door, the particular feeling of it. The exhale that happens automatically. The one your body produces without being asked. Because home is the place where the performance of being okay is finally allowed to stop, where you can put down whatever you have been carrying, where everything that is yours is waiting exactly where you left it. I have been walking through front doors my entire adult life with that feeling, except once. Once I walked through my front door and the feeling did not come. Because the home was not there anymore. Not the building was there. The walls, the floors, the windows I had chosen because they faced east, and I have always loved morning light. But everything that made it home, the furniture, the photographs, the children's drawings on the refrigerator, the sound of two small people moving through rooms, was gone. All of it, gone. My name is Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell. I had served in the United States Army for 11 years. I had completed 4 deployments, 2 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan, 1 to a location I am not at liberty to specify. I had a record I was proud of, commendations I had earned, colleagues who trusted me with their lives and whom I trusted with mine. I also had 2 children. Emma, 6 years old. She had my eyes and her father's laugh, and a way of running toward me when I came through a door that made every deployment worth everything it cost. Jacob, 4 years old. He had his father's eyes and my stubborn streak, and he had, on the morning I last saw him, insisted on helping me pack my bag because he wanted to make sure I had enough socks. I think about that morning constantly. The particular seriousness with which a 4-year-old counts socks. The way he held each pair up for my inspection before placing it carefully in the bag. "This many, Mama," he said, holding up all 10 fingers. "So your feet don't get cold." I had kissed the top of his head. I had held him for a long time. I had done what I always did in those last moments. Committed him to memory in the particular way of someone who understands that memory is what you live on when the person is not there. I deployed on a Monday morning in February. I came home on a Thursday afternoon in August. 18 months later, early. A rotation change that had moved my return date forward by 3 weeks. I had not told my husband the exact date. Not because I was hiding it, simply because in military marriages, dates shift. And I had learned over 4 deployments not to create expectations that logistics might not honor. I had told him the approximate week. I had said, probably the 2nd or 3rd week of August. Maybe sooner. It was sooner. I drove from the base to our house alone. I had always preferred the drive. Home alone. That transition time between the world of the work and the world of the family. 37 minutes. I had driven it many times. I pulled into our driveway at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I noticed the stillness first. The particular quality of a house that is empty in the middle of a Thursday afternoon, but not in the way of a house whose people are simply out. In the way of a house whose people are gone. I told myself I was imagining it. I got out of the car. I walked to the front door. I used my key. I opened the door. And the feeling did not come. Because the home was not there. The couch, gone. The dining table, gone. The photographs from the walls, gone. The refrigerator, when I walked to the kitchen, still there but empty. Door slightly ajar the way you leave a refrigerator when you are not coming back. The children's drawings, gone. The small pair of shoes, Jacob always left by the door because he could never remember to put them away, gone. I stood in the middle of my empty kitchen for a long time. Then I took out my phone. My husband's number rang 4 times. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called my mother. She answered on the 2nd ring. "Rachel," she said. And in that one word, my name, spoken in that particular tone, I understood that she knew something. That whatever this was, I was the last person to find out. "Where are my children?" I said. "If your hands just went cold, stay with me. Subscribe to this channel right now." Because what my mother told me in that phone call, and what I did in the 72 hours that followed, is something I have never told anyone completely. Until today. My mother told me everything she knew, which was not everything, but it was enough to understand the shape of what had happened. My husband's name was Michael. We had been married for 9 years. He was not military. He had always been the one who stayed, who managed, who held the home together while I was deployed. I had believed across 4 deployments in 9 years that he did this willingly, that our arrangement, my career, his management of our domestic life, the particular division of a military marriage, was something we had chosen together and something he was at peace with. I had been wrong. My mother had known something was changing for approximately 4 months. She had not told me, and I want to be clear that I understand why, that I have made my peace with her reasons, that the choice she made came from a place of love even if it was the wrong choice. She had not wanted to tell me while I was deployed. She had been afraid of what the information would do to me 6,000 miles away, with no ability to act on it. So she had waited. And while she waited, Michael had planned. He had been planning for longer than 4 months. My mother's 4 months was simply when she had noticed. The planning itself, the conversations with a lawyer, the financial arrangements, the decision about where he and the children would go, had been happening for considerably longer. He had taken the children to his mother's house, 3 states away. He had filed for emergency custody on grounds that I want to address directly and completely, because they matter and because the truth matters, alleging that my military service constituted an unstable home environment, and that my repeated absences had created conditions that were not in the children's best interests. He had filed while I was deployed. He had planned the filing to coincide with my return, or rather, with what he believed my return date would be. He had calculated incorrectly that I would arrive to an empty house with papers already filed and a legal situation already established. He had not calculated that I would come home 3 weeks early. I sat on the floor of my empty kitchen and I processed this information with the particular discipline of someone who has been trained to process information under conditions that do not allow for the luxury of falling apart. Then I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my JAG officer, Judge Advocate General, the military's legal arm, the resource available to service members facing exactly these situations. She answered immediately. I told her everything in approximately 7 minutes. She told me what I needed to do in approximately 3. The second call was to my commanding officer. Not because I was required to, but because he deserved to know. And because he had resources and connections that I did not. And because 11 years of service had taught me that you do not handle the hardest things alone when you have a team. He picked up on the first ring. Mitchell, he said. Sir, I said, I have a situation. Tell me, I told him. There was a brief silence. Where are you right now, he said. My kitchen floor, I said. Stay there, he said. I'm making calls. The third call was to Michael. He answered this time, on the third ring, with the careful voice of someone who had been expecting this call and had prepared for it. Rachel, he said. You're home early. Yes, I said, I am. A pause. I was going to call you, he said. I wanted to explain. Michael, I said. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I am going to say one thing and I need you to hear it completely. Okay, he said. I am coming for my children, I said. Not in a threatening way, not in an angry way. I am telling you as clearly as I can that everything you have filed and everything you have planned is going to be examined by people who understand military service and what it actually means. And I am coming for my children. Silence. Rachel? That's all I needed to say, I said. My lawyer will be in contact with yours. I hung up. I stood up from the kitchen floor. I walked out of my empty house, got in my car and drove to a hotel, and I began. What followed was the most focused 72 hours of my life. My JAG officer was extraordinary. My commanding officer made calls that I will not detail, but that resulted in the kind of attention to my case that comes when an institution decides one of its own has been wronged. A civilian attorney, recommended by my JAG officer, someone who specialized in military family law, was on retainer by the end of that first evening. The emergency custody filing Michael had made was based on a characterization of military service that my attorney described, in her precise and particular way, as legally aggressive and factually unsupported. He's arguing, she told me, that your service makes you an absent parent. We're going to argue that your service makes you exactly the kind of parent these children need in their lives. She was very good at her job. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday, 4 days after I came home to an empty house. I spent those 4 days preparing with a thoroughness that 11 years of military service had made second nature. Every deployment record, Every communication with the children during deployments, the letters, the video calls, the care packages, the evidence of a parent who was physically absent and emotionally present in every way. That distance allowed. Every school record, every medical appointment, every piece of documentation that showed the particular texture of my involvement in my children's lives. Michael's attorney presented his case. It took approximately 40 minutes. My attorney presented ours. It took considerably longer, not because we needed more time, but because the evidence was comprehensive and the judge, to her credit, examined every piece of it carefully. At one point, the judge looked at Michael directly and asked him a question. "I will remember for the rest of my life." "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "can you tell me what your children's school situation was during each of your wife's 4 deployments? Specifically, their teachers' names, their academic performance, their social development?" Michael looked at his attorney. His attorney looked at her notes. Neither of them answered. My attorney answered. From memory, because I had told her, because I had known, because I had made it my business to know from 6,000 miles away every teacher's name, every grade, every friendship, every difficulty, every triumph. The judge looked at me for a moment. Then she looked back at her papers. The ruling was not immediate. These things are never immediate. But the preliminary order, issued the same day, pending full proceedings, returned the children to my care. To our home, which I had returned to the day after the hearing, and which, without the furniture and photographs and drawings, was still the place where I had always been their mother. Emma came home first. She ran through the door the way she always had. That particular run. The one I had committed to memory across 4 deployments. And she held on with both arms and both legs, and I held her and did not let go for a very long time. Jacob came next. He walked in more carefully. He had always been the one who watched a room before he entered it. My stubborn, thoughtful boy. He stood in the doorway for a moment looking at me. Then he said, "Mama, did you have enough socks?" I laughed and cried at the same time in the way that only certain moments allow. "I had exactly enough," I said. "Come here." He came. The full custody proceedings took 4 months. They were not simple, Michael contested, adjusted his arguments, presented himself as consistently as someone could who had filed for emergency custody, while his wife was serving her country, and come home to find her house empty. The final order reflected the truth of our situation with an accuracy that I will always be grateful for. Primary custody, with me. Generous visitation, with Michael. Because my children love their father, and I have never believed that my grief about what he did should be allowed to become their loss. Michael and I do not speak beyond what is necessary for the children. What is necessary, we manage with the particular courtesy of 2 people who share something irreplaceable and have chosen to honor it despite everything else. I am still serving. My commanding officer, who made calls on my behalf from a parking lot the evening. I came home to an empty house, once told me that the measure of a soldier is not what they do when everything is going well. It is what they do when everything has gone wrong. I came home to an empty house. I made 3 phone calls. I went to a hotel and I began. Here's what a Thursday afternoon in an empty kitchen and 72 hours of the most focused work of my life taught me. The people who underestimate you, who count on your absence, who plan around your limitations, who file papers while you are 6,000 miles away believing that distance is the same as defeat. Those people have made a calculation, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply come home early, walk through the door, stand in the empty kitchen, and begin. I came home to an empty house. My husband had taken everything, including my children. He had not calculated on what I would do next. He should have. If this story reached you, if it opened something, please share it right now. And subscribe to this channel. Every week I bring you stories about the people who come home and what they do when home is not what they left. I am always listening.